Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. Awesome. So we're going to have another MEA with the community today. Awesome. Very nice to be able to answer some questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we have here with us today Henry Picella, the CEO of Streamr Network. We will be able to answer all the questions that were asked in our Discord from the community. So, of course, there's all kind of different questions. We have also sometimes some technical questions. Today is much more focused on generic questions directly for Streamr. We can maybe wait 1 or 2 minutes to see, first of all, if the sound works, first of all, one of the most important thing. So if someone in the chat can maybe just tell us if the sound is okay, if you can hear us well, so we can move afterwards with the first questions. Hello to the first persons. Rodman, Café Fool, Renderer, welcome to the stream.
You sent me quite a long list of questions that people had asked in advance.
We will do our best.
Yeah. At least 16 ones. So yeah, if I'm taking too long on one of the questions, then
I will try to stop you.
Yeah, try to stop me.
Indeed.
Otherwise, we're going to be here all evening.
It's true. It could be a very long MEA otherwise. Sound okay. Awesome. Very nice. Well, first of all, welcome to everyone. We will be able to start directly without wasting too much time. And the first question that we have, and it's not from one person, it's from multiple persons in our Discords, is about our CMO, our last CMO, Douglas. Can we have a little bit more information about, because normally we had an MEA of a marketing MEA a good week ago, and we had to cancel it.
Yeah, I know you guys were planning to do the marketing AMA, and maybe for that reason that the AMA was coming up, we had to really make a decision. Do we keep him or do we not keep him? Because we wanted to be very comfortable and very confident in bringing forward our head of marketing for this AMA, and we had to admit to ourselves that things were not really working out. So he started early this year, so there was a couple of months that he stayed with us. On paper, he looked very great. He was crypto native and had worked in some crypto projects before and was English native speaker as well, and everything looked pretty fine. But I don't want to go into too much of the details, as I'm not any kind of fan of like public bashing or anything like that. But let's just say that the day-to-day was not working out, and we were not happy with that. So we decided that, hey, we can do better. We want to really improve our marketing, and we need the right person for that. And this time we had to admit that, okay, this is not the right match. So we have to try again. Sometimes it happens. You can't really evaluate a candidate when you're hiring very well just based on a CV and a couple of interviews. You kind of really have to work with them for a while to know what the reality of it is. And it also means that sometimes it happens that you kind of make a bad hire. So we're back to searching and already interviewing new candidates. So it should be fine. Also, the timing is quite good as we're kind of in between milestones at the moment. So there's no fantastic big launch just coming up and we're screwed because we don't have marketing head on board. It's not quite like that. All the day-to-day operations is running fine. We have great people like Anthony and Tom who very well keep the kind of day-to-day running. So without having this head of marketing, what we're missing out perhaps more is like developing things for the long term and strategic insight into marketing and really developing our processes. But all the current processes are running just fine, nevertheless. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, it was very important for the people to hear it from you. Of course, we also had a very good message from you on Discord. So everything was already shared there, but it's always good to hear.
The whole thing was a little bit disappointing for us, of course, as well. But, you just have to... It's not an easy decision to make, as finding a new person is always a bit of a pain. But you just have to do what you have to do, I suppose. And this time, this is what had to be done.
We just have to go now forward and move on.
Right on. Yeah,
exactly.
That's how it goes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the answer. So second question that we have here is someone who's asking about some general updates about Tatum. So Tatum is the last milestone of Streamr. So could you give us a little bit more updates on that?
Yeah, it's the last milestone of the original ICO roadmap. So it's not the end of Streamr for sure, but it's the kind of 1.0 version that we're working towards. So after releasing the previous milestone, Brewback, in late February, we've full steam started to work on Tatum. The big new thing, as I've mentioned before, in Tatum is to implement the token economics on the network layer, so that really broker nodes can mine some streams and stake and earn, and there's delegation as well. And compared to the staking that we have in Brewback, it's quite different from the point of view that the Brewback thing is more of like a centralized toy version of the big thing which is coming in Tatum, but it gives us a glimpse of how it might work. So how's it going? Yeah, so there's different phases to approaching Tatum. There's been a research phase that's been going on already for almost 2 years with the block science guys, simulating the economy and laying out kind of a framework and rules and parameters and eventually the specifications for the thing. And now the specifications are pretty much ready. And so we can go to the implementation phase now. And that starts with smart contracts, as everything builds on top of that. So there's two main smart contract subsystems in Tatum. There's the bounty contracts, where brokers stake to join a stream and start earning some tokens from that bounty contract. And then there's the delegation subsystem. And right now we are working on the first one, the bounty smart contracts. And after that's done, we move on to the delegation. So that's what our kind of Ethereum and Solidity devs are working on at the moment. And in parallel to this, we've been workshopping with the network team a particular thing that is very much related to the token economy and the Tatum smart contracts, which is basically validation, the validation of work, in other words. So what we need to prevent in the network is free riders. And free riders means that somebody stakes, there's a node and they stake on a bounty, but they never do any work. And work in this context means propagation of the data to peers. So you have to follow the rules of the protocol. You join the stream's topology and you're expected to forward an incoming message to your peers in the network. And now if you don't do this, then you're breaking the rules of the protocol and you should not be rewarded from the contract. So this situation needs to be detected. And there's a way to do it. And we've been kind of developing a protocol for doing that. And how it's going to work is that the miners or the brokers who are in the bounty contract, they can kind of watch each other. So there won't be like a centralized party that says, hey, you're misbehaving. That would be too much centralization. But the brokers watch each other to conclude that they are honest. And if they find that someone is free riding or doing something funky there, they can basically vote the bad guy out of there. And they have incentive to vote the bad guy out because they are all sharing the same cake. So if there's one free rider, then they are kind of hurting you because they are getting a share. And if they were not there, then you'd get a bigger share. So everyone is incentivized to watch each other and try to form a group of nodes that are doing the job properly.
A real decentralized network at that moment.
Correct. Yeah. And this is very important for the reward system, so that it can't be so easily abused or anything like that. So those are kind of the two components: what happens on the smart contracts and what happens on the network. And to make this economy or this protocol work efficiently, you have to kind of cover both layers of the system.
Great, awesome, cool. So maybe we can directly go with the next one here. We have someone who's asking about our competitors. So the Streamr has some main competitors at this moment.
Well, if you look at it from the user's perspective, our main competitor is always the Web 2. Most application developers who are looking to build data pipelines or do something like messaging or whatever, they would go to the cloud services and accept the downsides of the cloud services, which is basically a centralization, vulnerability to attacks, censorship, someone else controlling your data, all those things. And that is still today, from a user's point of view, the main competitor for sure. The same goes, of course, for many things in Web3. The biggest competitor of Web3 is Web2, and that is no surprise, of course. It takes a certain mind shift to see the benefits of doing things in a new way and using a new tech stack. In the Web3 space, though, like if there's a Web3 project or you have a type of use case that benefits from having a decentralized data network like Streamr, then you don't have very many options to go to. Depends a little bit on your data volumes and what guarantees you want for the data and so on. Some projects use, for example, some stuff from the libp2p stack. Like Ethereum 2.0, for example, uses that, and it's good for that kind of stuff. But it doesn't give a lot of higher level guarantees or anything like that. So I think Streamr is in this certain space quite unique, and that's a nice thing to have. The question is then: is there a product market fit? Does someone need it, right? And all of Web3 is still quite early, so it's a little bit early to say like how popular these different protocols can eventually become. In the hype curve or in the adoption curve, we are still the whole space is still like very much in the early adopter phase, not mainstream. And everyone's a little bit still searching for the product market fit, like what's the ideal use case, who needs it desperately. And what we've found is for sure that like this Web3 space is where this kind of things is needed, because they can't use Web2. Like you can't build like a Web3 application, dApp or whatever, and then use like Amazon as the back end. That's just not doable. So I think that's
we're still very in early stage. Not everyone sees it that way, but it's so early stage at this moment still, Web3.
Yeah. So that's where most of the adoption is coming as well, from the Web3 space, because Web3 projects need other Web3 projects to build their applications. I'm already answering a different question, not one about the competitors, but yeah.
No worries. Yeah. So we have here someone who was asking about the weakness and the strong parts, the strongest and the weakest sides of this project of Streamr.
Okay, I'm of course a little bit biased, so someone from the outside might be able to point those out better. But I think personally that Streamr has built a good reputation as being a very technically strong team. And maybe that also shows in my background. I'm a technical CEO, so we're a quite technical team solving difficult technical problems. And where the weakness comes in is maybe we're a little bit introvert. We're not strong perhaps on marketing or going out there and networking and forming connections with all the other projects and that kind of thing. So I think that would be our weakness as a team, I suppose. But those things can be addressed though, and we have some plans. I think some of the later questions will a little bit touch on those things. So maybe I'll just stop there for now.
Yeah.
I see that as our strength and weakness, and every project has strengths and weaknesses. And out of all the compromises, I think ours is a quite good one to have, because I would really hate to be like in a project where the technology would be really thin or non-existent. That is just like hyping and shilling the token or whatever without really like building anything real. So I would much rather do this than the other way around.
I agree, 100%.
I hope you all agree on that.
Without giving any names, I think today there's indeed a lot of projects that are working that way today in the Web3. So
a lot.
Yeah, we can again say to the people, always be very careful with your research online in Web3. Very important. So someone is asking about the real life project running today on our website. Do we have? So we have today some projects already running. Is there any other ones that are not published on our website that are also like maybe just in the team today, or
you mean like the teams using the technology, like use cases and that kind of things? Yeah, most of them are on the website. There's new ones, like all the time there's some new builders and new teams coming to us. So it will take a while for them to get started and get their logo on the website. So that takes a bit of time. So the new ones are not there. And then there's a couple that have been under NDA so that we can't talk about it. So those are also not on the website. But otherwise, I suppose the main ones are there. And we try to keep it somewhat up to date as well. There's not like some projects take the approach of listing like 100 logos on the website, like every single thing that's ever been done on the software would go on the website. But I think we've also removed some that were pilots or really small ones or something. So we try to pick meaningful ones so that you don't have to look at the list of like 100 logos.
And you're lost afterwards.
Yeah, or some old ones like happened like 3 years ago or something like that.
I totally agree. We can see that always.
Yeah.
Is there what looks like an ideal Streamr customer like?
Yeah, okay. We don't talk about customers really. Let's say, what does an ideal user look like? It's not really customer because we don't sell anything. The technology is open and therefore everyone. But what does the ideal use case look like? Well, we already talked about Web3 space a little bit. So anyone who's building like anything decentralized will basically need this. So if they want to build like some real-time features in their application, some user, like multiplayer interactions or broadcasting of some data or whatever, those would be like really good fit. So one answer is crypto native projects. Then another one I think is use cases where there are many stakeholders. So there are many parties who want to communicate with data to each other. Maybe it's a smart city, or maybe it's just a consortium of airline companies or whatever, or maybe it's a complex device like a car or a ship or something like that has many parts from many different manufacturers, and they want to do some data sharing or real-time analytics or this kind of thing. But the problem is that if there are different companies, different parties, if they wanted to do this kind of data sharing, then they would have to agree to use some otherwise they would need to agree to use some centralized platform, like, hey, let's go to AWS, or hey, let's come, you guys come to our data service or whatever. And that kind of situation is very, very hard for the others, because it will always seem like it's owned by whoever set it up, and it's not really neutral, and there's not necessarily like trust between the parties. But if there's interaction over an open protocol that is owned by no one and operated by everyone, then that removes the thresholds of participating in that kind of data sharing. So I think those are the two main types of use cases that we're seeing: Web3 and then these multi-stakeholder ones, where there's a lot of different parties or a lot of different people involved in a data process.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So I see also some questions in the chat, Natasha. We will be able to take maybe some questions later on at the end if we see that we're still like in the time. It depends on how long the answers will be. So I will for sure take back the questions later on. So what is the main focus for now? Is it more on the investor sides, or more for the users with on the technical part?
Well, I think the most important thing that we can do at the moment is to deliver the product, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to remember we are still building. We're still like not at 1.0 version of the thing. So our focus is getting to the Tatum milestone. And of course, in the meanwhile, we're chatting with others and finding use cases and finding those product market fit. But I wouldn't say that's like number one focus at the moment. So in order for this thing that we're building to be valuable to the world and our community and our ecosystem, it needs to be kind of finished, right? So unless we get there, then we don't really have anything, right? Mm. So that is our focus for this year, to get there, really make a system that works really well and is fully decentralized. That is a very strong point. Mm-hmm. And it also increases very much the utility and attractiveness of the token to have something that really goes with it. So implementing the token mechanics of the network is part of this number one priority that we have. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. And to remind people, so this has been going on since almost 5 years already, the building. So there was a long way to be able to reach the 1.0 version. So
yeah.
But it seems that it's almost there.
Yeah, it's not a quick and easy thing to build. It's not like, okay, I write a couple of smart contracts and then make some nice front end for it. It's kind of like, almost like building a completely new type of network. Yeah, and we took some detours on the way. We built the marketplace, which was like an application to enable data monetization. But we should have probably done that a little bit later if we were to kind of get the chance to make the choice again. But at the time, data marketplaces were quite popular. IOTA shipped one, and then later discovered that okay, it's not really a thing. The Ocean guys shipped one, and they discovered that it's not really a thing. And we shipped one and discovered that it's not really a thing. So seemed like the right thing to do at the time, but the world was not ready to buy access to data products in crypto. Yeah, I'll talk about that maybe with some of the later questions. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the Streamr Hub and the work that's going towards that. But let's see. It hasn't really been properly introduced to the community yet. So
exactly, 100%. So about the pipeline, how's it looking for the sales pipeline at this moment?
Sales pipeline.
Yeah,
that sounds like a very Web 2 thing to.
I agree, 100%.
but I understand the question. But we're not selling anything. Our product is free, so the question doesn't make a lot of sense. But I would rephrase the question so that what does our ecosystem or outreach pipeline look like? And that is a question that does make sense, and I can answer that. So most of our traction has recently come from the Web3 space. And so crypto native projects, and mostly like startups and small scale teams. And that's mostly inbound, so they come to us, and that's nice. But one segment that is kind of missing from our pipeline is to do more outreach, and especially to the what someone called earlier the real world. So talking about companies, enterprises, universities, governments, this kind of parties that are not crypto native, but trying to get them on board would be good for the mind shift that needs to happen for Web3 to really take off, and also Streamr. And we tried that. We've tried that a couple of times with kind of mixed results. We did that in 2018 with the marketplace, and we got some interesting parties on board, like HPE and Nokia and that kind of parties. It was hot at the time. And then we did another push in 2020 that was more around data unions, as the Streamr Network was not yet kind of decentralized and ready for enterprise use. But with Brubeck, things change quite a lot, because now the network is decentralized and we can kind of make good on many of the promises that the technology has in terms of like censorship resistance or robustness or security, and this kind of things that you just don't get in a centralized system. So we are now kind of setting up a new pipeline to work on that area as well. And the way that we're thinking about it is that, well, you always need a certain kind of spearhead, like a simple pitch to go and tell to people, like, hey, why don't you do this on the Streamr protocol? So that's easy for them to understand. And we've been developing this idea about open data and making a push around open data. It's a very, very good one to go to almost anyone and say that, hey, do you have some interesting data streams that you want to share in an open data fashion, whether it's for attracting innovators in a hackathon, or if it's like positioning your enterprise to be like Web3 pioneer or whatever. Different parties may have different reasons to do it, but I think for almost anyone it's an attractive pitch to listen to, and for this for this pitch, we've been developing some materials as well as planning some changes, especially to the front end part. So right now we have the Streamr core application where you go to manage your streams and resources, and then you have the marketplace, which has been on a back burner. Not a lot has happened with that since the original launch. So now we are working on something that I don't know if it's the final name, but maybe it is, but we've been calling it the Streamr Hub. So basically merging the core application and the marketplace into something that really promotes and enables like stream discovery, and for different parties that are publishing some kind of data on the Streamr network to package their content in a discoverable and a nice way. The marketplace doesn't really accomplish this, even though originally that was the intention of the marketplace, that would exactly make content discoverable on the network. But the marketplace is too sales oriented. It's very commercially oriented. And what we found out since 2018 is that there's not a lot of data buyers that are ready to buy data with crypto. So I think adding more neutrality and this open data angle also to the application that people can use to go in there and find, okay, what's in here? Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to integrate this stream. And making that easy and kind of upfront really helps that pitch as well. So that's something we're going to work on the front end side while the network team works towards Tatum. There's this track of work for the Streamr Hub that happens in parallel to that. There will be a blog post quite soon. Me and Matthew have been working on the post to really share this idea properly with the community. So this is just a sneak peek. But that's the kind of pipeline that we're right now building around open data that allows us to go to other crypto projects, enterprises, universities, almost anyone to say that, hey, why don't you share something openly on the Streamr network and get the benefits that come from that.
Yeah, I think when people will see it as something much more user-friendly and something much more easy to understand, I think the visual is something always very important for people today. So it's going to be really awesome to have this.
Yeah, and the front end is not important to everyone, especially for developers or who are publishing data. They don't go to the front end. They write their script. They use the client library, or they use the command line tool, or they use one of these, but they don't really go to the front end. They don't go to the DApp, so to say. But for someone who's coming in, who's curious about Streamr, they come to the website. They're like, okay, what is this? Maybe they're not even a developer, but they want to understand better, like what is it used for, what is there. They would go to the application, to the front end, and see, like, boom, okay, these are the things that are on there, and they can click and they can see there's live data going and, data flowing there. And that's quite, that gives a good first impression, and I think that's what we should try and build with the Streamr Hub.
And is there, maybe just to add on top of that, is there any idea about some dates, for example, for the Streamr Hub?
It's a bit too early to say. We will kind of have to do 2 iterations to get towards that. So the first little thing will be to release the multi-chain marketplace. It's like the first step towards the Streamr Hub. So that will happen in quite soon, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So we're talking late May or early June or something like that, I suppose. That won't be still the Streamr Hub, but it will lay some of the groundwork for the Streamr Hub so that these on the marketplace they're called products, but in Streamr Hub they will be called projects. But anyway, these projects can be created on much cheaper chains than the marketplace today, where basically the high transaction fees of Ethereum mainnet really make it difficult to create these objects there. So that will change first, and then the applications will merge. So that will happen like in the second half of this year. I think Q3, Q4, probably. Well, I would just be guessing right now, but October.
That would be great.
October,
So maybe
November,
maybe something before Tatum.
Yeah, I think so. So I think this front end update would happen before Tatum.
That's great.
I believe so.
Okay, awesome. We have someone here asking the question. I think most of the people do know the answer, but I think it's always good to be able to mention it as well. It's just about the amount of money being burned a month. What is the current rate?
I think it's around 350,000 per month. Yeah.
So
maybe now a little bit less. We've tried to bring it down, actually. So in the first years, there was quite a lot of burn. Let's say 6 million per year. Maybe it's worth noting for the new listeners that we raised 30 million in 2017 for like a 5-year roadmap, basically. And the money was supposed to last until the end of that roadmap. And we're now starting to be towards the end of that roadmap. And it means that the 1.0 version of Streamr is quite close, but it also means that the funds raised to deliver the 1.0 version is starting to run out at some point. So we've also been kind of scaling the team appropriately, making small adjustments, bringing down the burn rate. So, but I think it's around 300K. So on a yearly level, that would mean like 3.5-4 million or so.
Yeah, so less than in the beginning.
It's less than in the beginning, but obviously something that we can't keep up forever unless there's new funding to be had or some kind of sustainable process that can be created. And I can talk a little bit more about that. I think there were some later questions also.
Yeah, a little bit actually. So there's actually a question about because we have the SIP6 for the people who don't know also. So on Snapchat, we had some voting as well with the community. If everyone can participate there. So there was this kind of long-term funding. So how will Streamr be able to fund the rest for the next years after the last milestone and when everything is actually done? Yeah,
so SIP6 was one idea. And maybe it's worth noting that there's like a maximum supply of the data tokens is 2 billion, and there now at the moment only exist a little bit under 1 billion data tokens. To the rest is up to the DAO to decide. And one thing that the DAO has decided already is this SIP6. And the proposal of SIP6 was to allocate 100 million tokens, which would represent 10% supply increase of on top of the current one, or if you think about it in terms of the 2 billion, then it would be 5% of that to raise a long-term fund. And at the time of SIP6, the market was quite hot, actually. So it was definitely like a bull market thought, to be honest. And it had quite strong restrictions to how the funds can be raised. For example, it requires that the buyers accept a 12 to 24 month lockup. And we found that this restriction is too strict. No one in the crypto VCs will buy with this kind of lockup. So in order to raise this long-term fund, if we want to do it upfront, like the idea was at the time of SIP6, we need to have a little bit more liberal conditions on that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we haven't really pushed SIP6 now. There's nothing really happened on there except some conversations with investors. And most VCs, they only invest pre-ICO, first of all. So if you're post-ICO, they're like, okay, not interested. And the other aspect is that if someone does want to buy the token, they can go to the markets and buy them from there. So why would they come directly to us? Now, the idea in SIP6 is that they get a discount in exchange for the lockup. But this is not acceptable to the VCs. They don't want the lockup. Really. So then it also doesn't make a lot of sense to give them the discount, because why would you? So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think we need to make a new SIP at some point. Not urgent. We still have a runway, plenty of that, so not super urgent. But sometime this year, I would say that we need to make a new decision in the DAO about the long-term funding, and maybe it doesn't come in form of like, okay, here's a 10%, like boom, like the instantaneous allocation. Maybe it happens more over time or something like that. But the usage policy of that those allocated tokens needs to be a little bit more liberal than what was imagined in SIP6, because these lockups are not going to work. So, for example, giving the DAO the ability to, over time, sell some tokens on the market, for example, would be an efficient way. It doesn't mean that the DAO would go and dump the tokens there like right away or anything, but it needs to be done in a very controlled way so that it doesn't really impact the markets in any way. But that could generate like a really sustainable process for a long time to maintain and further develop the project and the technology. So I think we kind of we anyway need to shift from one mode, which has been the ICO funding, to another mode, which will be the long-term mode that the project will operate in. And for sure, the key tool to make that happen will be the unallocated tokens. And probably the full 2 billion will never be needed, as we have always thought. But probably at least the amount that was already approved in SIP6 is probably in play, the 100 million tokens. Right now, none of that has been used. So it's, there has been no inflation from that, no supply increase from that decision. But I think it's very important for the project to have this kind of tool. We need to make a new decision to make it really viable, because SIP6 is not. This is what we found out.
It's not working correctly.
No, it's too strict. The lockup rules are not acceptable. So we have to get rid of that if we want to raise that money.
I think it's very understandable, and we don't have a lot of products today that have actually that kind of tool today, because of SIP1, where it was voted to be able to get actually those kind of 50% more tokens just locked, and we will see what will happen with it. This is something very, very important for Streamr for the long run, for the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's so no one really knows where it will go, but there is this kind of supply that can manage and make sure that we will have the funds necessary, the necessary funds for the product if it's needed. Yeah. And the token holders can vote on that.
Right. The token holders decide what happens with that. I think it's very powerful, instead of deciding in advance what will happen for it, because we already saw that things change. The space is changing, the world is changing, the market is changing. Like around SIP6, it was still bull market. Everything felt rosy. DeFi was yielding like 15% per year on stable coins, and it was just looking a little bit different. And now the market has come down, obviously, and a different strategy would probably be suited for this moment in time. So if you kind of lock your things in advance, so in a way that they can't be changed later, then you're stuck with bad decisions. So actually making very timely decisions in the DAO about what's the best move at a given time, I think is really a powerful way to be able to govern this kind of project. Maybe it gives some uncertainty. No one knows what will happen to the unallocated 1 billion tokens, but that's also the power of the project, that they can be used if necessary. And who decides?
Exactly.
Well, the token holders decide, right?
That's indeed something very important. And related to that, there's actually someone who was asking also a question about the SIP1 because today we have an inflation of 2% based on those kind of on those tokens for all the running nodes all the people who are staking under their running nodes. So this will be normally, I believe, I don't want to say a mistake, but until the end of the year.
Until Tatum.
Until Tatum, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, until Tatum.
Yeah. Whenever it comes, until
exactly.
Tatum.
Exactly. So what will happen afterwards? So there should be, I guess, a new vote at that moment. Is there any idea? Do we know already something more about the remaining tokens, how it will be distributed, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I think there's two main things that the DAO needs to decide. One is about this long-term funding, and one is about these minor rewards, really, from Tatum onwards. Both of them affect the supply of unallocated tokens, and it's entirely up to the DAO. But at the moment, the 2% rate has seemed like quite appropriate. It gives good rewards to the stakers who are participating. I mean, we're still seeing like almost 100% APR, and if you compound that, it gives like 130% APY. That's quite good. So even though it's 2%, there's still a small enough part of the supply participating that the tokens that are participating are getting quite good yields. Mm-hmm. From Tatum onwards, we don't know how many people will participate. Maybe it stays pretty much the same, or it grows over time until the time that we get to Tatum. So I think we should there also set some rate of rewards that would be also in the single-digit supply increase per year. Maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 4%, I don't know. Depends a little bit what seems to be, how many miners there are at the time, what seems to be attractive. There could also be like a very strong one in the beginning, like, okay, let's put like 10% in the beginning, but then it would go down. So there could be this kind of model to really attract people in the beginning, but then it would turn to something more sustainable in the long run. So I think it's too early to say, but I think nothing crazy. I wouldn't go. There's some projects that inflate their token supply like 50% per year or like that. I don't think anyone in the streamer community would really want to see that happen necessarily, but I think responsible monetary policies is a hard topic. We've seen it in the real world with the central banks and inflation due to the COVID and printing money. So it's not easy to have good monetary policy. All choices have pros and cons, but I think the streamer ecosystem has the benefit of there's not an infinite supply, but there's a quite good supply to print these tokens and incentivize the actions that we want. For the central banks and for COVID, it was to save the economy from collapsing. But in our case, we would just like to see growth of the network and So we're not in a, it's not like a crisis comparable to COVID crisis. So we don't also need to print so much money.
I agree, and it seems, to be honest, that most of the people in the community and people who are really participating today, they have the same vision as well on Streamr. They're not here to get like that fast hype and get away. It's really people who are here to be able to participate on the long run. We can really see that as well in the voting, actually.
Yeah, and this 2% rate has been very, very modest. I don't think it has had, for example, any kind of market effect. Though it's a little bit hard to analyze because in the crypto, the volatility is so big. But theoretically, the token price would go down 2% per year due to the supply increase if everything else stayed the same. But of course, everything else does not stay the same. The project is making progress and the whole crypto market is going up and down. So it's impossible to say what the effect of this supply increase is. But at least it's so small that it gets lost in the overall noise on the markets. And now that the whole market has collapsed like 50% or more, it's quite obvious that this supply inflation processes don't really drive markets. Maybe in a very, very mature market, it could be so. But I think like even if the amount of gold in the world suddenly increased by 10%, it might not really affect the price of gold because the price of gold is driven by very different factors than the actual amount of gold that exists in the world. So with the same analogy, the price of the data token is not very much affected by how many there are.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we could actually go very deep in these kind of thoughts about like the tokenomics and really try to search about what are the best goals and everything. But I do have still here a couple of questions of the community.
Let's go.
I can have maybe I will keep this question for the last question because maybe it will be a little bit longer and it's also a very good question that people will like. But first, what is the status of Kraken and Tracey as well, and other like TX in the coup with Streamr at this moment?
Yeah. Okay. So to give a little bit of background again on that question, so TX is like a services company that we established to work alongside the Streamr project. Streamr project doesn't sell anything, and we don't, bill hours or something like that to some customer. So TX can do that. And when we were working on this enterprise relationships and doing some pilots and that kind of stuff, we set up that entity to be able to handle the work. So they could have a customer and build some work and build something around Streamr. And there's some really good stuff that came out of that, as was mentioned in this question as well. Kraken and Tracey. Kraken is kind of like a fork of the marketplace for health data. So adding some really cool features, actually, like secure multi-party computation and that kind of thing for this specific area. So it was an EU-funded Horizon 2020 project. And that one is now in later stages. So that was like a 2-year project, I think. And now I think it's becoming ready this year. So they're basically like working towards the final deliverables in terms of technical demo as well as the paperwork that they have to submit to the EU. And all that is going pretty good. And also there are some kind of commercial ideas that could come out of it. So with some people have been saying that, okay, they could kind of take some of the stuff that has been built in Kraken project and set up like a startup around that to try and commercialize, because the Kraken is very research oriented, so it's basically like not for profit thing or anything. So if that happens, then that's really good for Streamr as well, because the deliverables of Kraken do include the marketplace and data unions and can integrate to the Streamr network as well. So if something comes out of that in the long run, I'm really happy. Tracey was another one that was mentioned. That was a pilot project with WWF and Union Bank in the Philippines. I think that pilot was basically successfully completed, and I think nothing is happening anymore on that front. I don't think anything like commercially viable came out of that yet, at least. But I'll have to check with the guys who are working on that. The TX team is sort of like separate from the team that I run, so I don't always know who's doing what. But my impression is that the pilot was completed, but it didn't really take off from there. Not sure why. Then there's some other stuff. A lot of talk recently has been around the Atarka project. It's quite cool. It's also a research project around like anti-rival tokens. And I don't know how much you guys have heard in the community, but there's at least some interesting experiments coming up around these anti-rival NFT stuff that the researchers have developed as part of that thing.
I can add on top of that there will be indeed something with Artaika at Streamr very soon. I can't say any date because we don't have any date for the moment, but for the anti-rival tokens, it's going to be very interesting, and we will be able to share something about it as soon as possible when everything is ready. But yeah, it's going to be really awesome to be able to talk about it. But we already have a couple people who already knows about it.
Yeah, so testing the ideas, I suppose, on that.
Indeed, exactly.
Then I know the TX guys are now working with a couple of more startup type things, as opposed to previously they were more like targeting the enterprise. But then the enterprise kind of dried out, like I mentioned before, because we noticed that they weren't quite ready for this stuff yet. And also the network was not ready for enterprise yet a couple of years ago. So now TX has also been working with some startups, doing like bootstrapping type of things. Like if somebody wants to build something on top of Streamr, maybe launch their own token, build their own Web3 project, they would go in and help write a white paper or help the team think about token economics and this kind of stuff. Just getting these teams started. And they've now been working with a couple of ones, very, very interesting ones. Don't know which ones I can publicly talk about and which ones not, so I'm a little bit afraid to say. But there's one really cool data union idea that's coming out of there. Someone who's already been in the community for quite some time, but now they're working with TX basically to get their thing started. So that's cool. And there's another one. This one for sure is under NDA, so it's like it's like a communication platform. Maybe that's.
I see. You can't tell much more.
No, I have to give very high level name for it, but it would be a communication platform. That would also use Streamr as the messaging engine or protocol under the hood.
That would be really awesome indeed. We will, I guess, talk a little bit more about it when we can.
Yeah, let's see how that goes. But basically, the TX business hasn't really like grown to something amazing. It hasn't become a new consensus or or something like that. It has a supportive role. And that's great. We can kind of have them deliver kind of turnkey solutions to some customers that want that kind of thing. But most of the builders in the Streamr ecosystem, they are kind of do-it-yourself types, especially now that the adoption has been coming more from the Web3 space. It's not like they come to us like, hey, we want to buy a project from you. They come to us more like, hey, we want to use your technology. And that's also what we want. And the kind of selling work would be really a distraction for the Streamr team. So it's great that TX has some business, and it's probably slowly also growing, but it's not really like a make or break thing for Streamr project.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Yeah, so we all also actually have something very exciting. It's about the ChatApp. So we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and someone asked, "What is this ChatApp all about?" Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, it started as a demo. So since Streamr is a messaging protocol, then it makes sense to maybe have a messaging application to show. Of course, Streamr is very oriented to like machine to machine and that kind of stuff, but why not human to human as well? It works just as well for human messaging. So we thought that we'd build like a quick demo app where you could basically like kind of like a WhatsApp, decentralized WhatsApp type. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and all the other popular IMs are also big centralized corporations. So why not have a messenger that works natively with your, Ethereum wallets and is based on fully decentralized protocols? So we started working on that. It a little bit snowballed because we thought that it was really cool. So now it's maybe a little bit more than a demo. It's actually like quite polished even. So I don't think as such it will go mainstream to compete with WhatsApp, but I think it's very interesting for the crypto community and for Web3 to have this kind of thing, kind of like a chat for wallets.
I agree.
You can send a message to some Ethereum address that or create groups. It can be one-on-one. It can be group chat rooms where you just add people with their Ethereum addresses. It could be kind of one-to-many pattern, like channels that you have on Telegram where only the owner can post, and then there's a lot of read-only subscribers. All of these patterns are possible with Streamr protocol, so they can also be easily implemented in such a chat application.
The use case behind it is actually really huge. It's just a matter of IDs, I think, and to be able to implement them as well in the chat app. But yeah, there's a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and there are some like really fun composability ideas as well, because basically the access control to streams is on chain now since Brewback. So you could build composability with other smart contracts that would control the access to these chat rooms. So just to give an example, you could have a chat room where you can enter if you have like a CryptoPunk NFT in your wallet or something like this. That could be automatic, so no one can prevent access and no one needs to govern this access, but it is automatic because everything is a smart contract. NFTs are a smart contract, and the access registry is a smart contract, so it would just work. Or you could have a room that is like, okay, if you own over 1 million data tokens, then you can enter this room, kind of whale chat or whatever. And it will work for any token or any NFT that the kind of support is added on the smart contract level. So it has some cool ideas, I think. I don't know if everyone in the Ethereum space will start using this application, and maybe that's not even the goal, but at least it acts as a really cool demonstrator for what the Streamr protocol is and how it works. And since it can work in this way for humans, then it can also work in this way for anything, machine
Exactly.
applications, whatever. But basically, the messaging patterns are there.
Yeah, I can't wait to be able to tell more about the chat app and be able to push it out to the community as well very soon.
Yeah, it's quite ready. It needs some usability improvements still, but basically it's there. It works, but the wallet interactions and that kind of things are still kind of rough. You might have MetaMask suddenly popping up and asking you to sign something, and it's like, if you're not used to that kind of thing, it might be a little bit weird. For Web3 natives, maybe it's okay, but certainly people who are used to WhatsApp and the experience of Web2 applications, it will be kind of weird. So it needs a little bit more hand-holding to help the user. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. Okay, well, we are here actually almost a little bit more than an hour. So if that's fine for you, I will pick up a couple fast questions that were kind of answered already, but it's always fun to be able to answer a couple questions from the chat. So we have this one. I didn't forget about Natasha. Don't you think too much EPR stake can hurt data price in the long run? What is your solution?
Yeah, I do think it can hurt, but I think the level at which it would start to hurt would be a lot bigger than what the inflation rate is now. So if we're talking 2% or even 5 or 10%, I don't think it will really do anything, because the price of all assets in the crypto markets are driven by very complicated set of variables. So I think the effect of this supply inflation is by far dominated by other things like overall crypto sentiment, Bitcoin price, Ethereum price, and what's happening in those projects. They affect data price as well. And now we saw Bitcoin came down, data came down. Nobody cared about what the inflation rate is. So as long as we take a responsible attitude towards the supply, then I think it will have like very small effect on the market.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Do you have a program for mainnet launch or dedicated DEX? I just put this outside because we actually do have DEXs already. But
I'm not sure what is being asked.
yeah, I think if we are actually having some. No, the question is not phrased correctly. Indeed, I maybe even misread it. Not sure. I will put it here. Another question that we also had.
T program. I don't know. Anyway, so okay.
Yeah, I have another one here. If you would like, can we use in the future a MetaMask connected to a hardware wallet without a third party? So this is actually another question.
You can already use hardware wallet with MetaMask. It doesn't use any third party. So if you have a Ledger or Trezor wallet, then MetaMask supports at least those ones directly. I don't know what's meant here by without a third party, but it doesn't use a third party.
Maybe the hard wallets, like for example Ledger, they see it as a third party. Oh, yeah.
So how would you have a hardware wallet that's not made by anyone? You build it yourself.
by a DAO who has robots.
Maybe. Yeah, no, but using those hardware wallets with MetaMask is very good. I do it. Everyone does it.
I agree.
It doesn't compromise the security in any way, because with the hardware wallet, the signing always happens in the hardware device. So your private key is never exposed to any application. So wherever you plug your hardware wallet, it's kind of always quite safe, because it will ask you to confirm whatever you are doing.
Exactly. Here, very fast last question. It's also good because some people are talking sometimes about Streamr and their NFTs. And it's crazy because Streamr didn't do a lot of NFTs until today, besides the Wolfpack. So yeah, maybe you can...
Yeah, so there's at least a couple of things related to NFTs. I think both are interesting. So one was already mentioned around this Atarga project and the anti-rival token thing, where NFTs can be used to reward, for example, community members for helping out the project. But I think more interesting even is the aspect of using Streamr in like dynamic NFTs. So basically, I don't know if that's the right word. Previously, people were talking about these code-driven NFTs. But basically, I'm talking about NFTs that are not pictures or something like that, but can actually run code. So you can have like a little web application in the NFT. And if you have that, and these already exist, there's a lot of those. But you could use Streamr to drive what happens in the NFT. So your NFT could have some interactions between users who are watching the NFT, for example. Imagine, for example, that there's, I don't know, what could be a silly example. Let's say your NFT, this is very artistic. So let's say it's water. It's basically 3D rendered water or something, and then with your mouse cursor you could go and click at some point in the water, and that would produce like ripples, right? But then everyone else can do the same, and they would see each other's ripples, right? So it becomes this multiplayer art where anyone can create ripples in the same fabric of substance in the NFT, and then it becomes like this shared experience. So since it's art, it could be anything, but having this kind of presence features. Okay, who's looking at it? Maybe it's like something that changes color depending on how many people are looking at it, or whatever. Artists can come up with all kind of crazy
Exactly.
stuff. So Streamr would be a really good protocol for making that kind of things into NFTs, because it doesn't compromise the decentralized nature of NFTs. So you can still, it doesn't need like a centralized backend. I could make an NFT that relies on some centralized service, but then if that goes down, then your whole NFT will break and probably be worthless as well. It's like you buy a painting and then somebody burns it or something. So that would be terrible. But if we want to create NFTs, art and otherwise, that are forever and kind of indestructible, I suppose, or unstoppable in a certain way, then using stuff like IPFS or Streamr or blockchain as the backend is a good idea.
I agree. It was very funny what you said in the beginning with the waves, because I don't know if you heard about Pixel War. There was kind of one image, and everyone can just add one pixel.
Yeah.
And it was a real war, so the whole world could participate just in one image. And the goal was to be able to create some images or create something. but it was not an NFT, so it was not that great.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
kind of like
that.
the $1 million website. It was a thing like in the early days of the internet. You're too young, Anthony, to remember this. There was this original first time they sold like $1 per pixel on this
Crazy.
just the website, and there was 1 million pixels, and the big players went and bought. There was like Microsoft and IBM like even buying. So interesting way in the early days of the internet too.
There's indeed a lot of things to do with these NFTs.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and we were actually chatting with a project that was building like a NFT engine of sorts, and they also worked on kind of a prototype of plugging in Streamr to their thing. I'll have to catch up with those guys to see where that's going. But it was very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas around NFTs today. We really have a lot of people trying to create so much different things. It's
Right.
really amazing.
And you don't need anyone to like plug in Streamr to some platform. You can just build your own NFT and just use Streamr directly. But the thing that these guys were doing would make it a little bit easier maybe. So it was kind of, you can just make an NFT and add some ready-made components to it and that kind of thing. But yeah, I would like to see some NFTs where Streamr protocol is used to do something fun, and it's quite easy to do as well. So and we were also working on a fun demo of that, but it was never released. Maybe we should release it. It got kind of stuck with some graphics glitches or something, so we should maybe finish that one.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. Indeed.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think we answered all the questions. First of all, thank you very much, Henry, for answering all the questions that the community had with us for today. I know it always takes quite a lot of time, but it's always a pleasure to be able to have you with here in video on YouTube. So really cool.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it's quite lightweight for me to do these Q&A type of things, as I don't need to like spend hours preparing or something. So I can just hop on a call and chat with all of you. So thanks for arranging this, Anthony, and thanks everyone for joining and posting questions.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you very much, Henry. Have a great evening, and we will talk very soon.
Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.